A quick shout out also to all of the people joining us online. So thank you very much for sticking with us this afternoon. So today's session will feature three amazing speakers, and I'm really proud to have such high quality, high caliber speakers to talk to us this afternoon. We'll then have a video message, and we'll then have a panel session that Mary will chair. So following on from Mary, I think what this session really does is bring together that theme of innovation. Innovation across science and technology, innovation across finance, innovation across social initiatives and engagement. And we've got a great panel that will bring us some comments on that this afternoon. So it's going to be a very exciting panel, and so please settle in and enjoy the show that we've got planned for you this afternoon. So it's my a great pleasure to welcome our first keynote speaker. Morten Engard Rasmussen is the Executive Vice President, People and Culture for Novonesis, based in Denmark. Morten leads Novonesis' engagement with external stakeholders on sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion. Please join me in welcoming Morten to the stage.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Dear Ministers, Excellencies, and fellow distinguished guests, thank you for inviting me and Novonesis to this very important and very timely summit. I trust no one will fall asleep, although it's 2 o'clock and it's after lunch, so hopefully we will, and I'm not sure it'll be exciting as the last game, but let's see. I've truly been looking forward for today and looking forward to sharing and discussing our vision for bioeconomy. I can only echo what the previous speakers have been saying before me, that there's an urgent need for action, and we as a sector, we have many of the solutions already available. Solutions from bioeconomy, or as we call them, biosolutions, are increasingly becoming acknowledged for what they are: solutions based on nature's own resources and with help from science brought to scale in a competitive way. Biosolutions can contribute with significant value from mitigating climate change, reducing land use, and creating jobs for the future. But it requires that we unleash their power. There we go. As mentioned, my name is Morten Engard Rasmussen. I represent the global company called Novonesis. We are based in Denmark. I'm also fairly sure that we are not a household name. So let me just talk a little bit about who and the solutions that we innovate and what we do. Novonesis is a world-leading biosolutions partner. A biosolution is where we solve a problem by using biology, and we believe that these solutions rooted in biology are key of tackling the challenges that our world is facing. We make an impact by working closely with many different types of partners and customers. There's a bit of lag on, there we go. Novonesis is a combination of two companies which took place in the beginning of the year. Christian Hansen and Novozymes, who have been working with biology solutions for many years. Christian Hansen, a former global bioscience company with almost 150 years of experience developing natural ingredient solutions for food, nutritional, pharmaceutical, and agricultural industries to enable sustainable and better food systems for a healthier living and more people on this planet. And Novozymes is a former world leader in biological solutions and leading provider of enzymes and microbial technologies. Novozymes' history goes back 100 years, working alongside customers and partners and global communities to improve industrial performance while preserving the planet's resources and helping to build better lives. That slide comes again and again. There we go. At Novonesis, we are here to better our world with biology. And what that means is that we solely focus on biological solutions that are rooted in biology and has the ability to help humanity's challenges. And since we began our legacy as a company more than a century ago, this has been our guiding star. It is how we have gotten so far, and it's also how we'll impact the future. Now more than ever, the world needs change. And with biosolutions, the possibilities for transformation are endless. Our technology toolkit enables us to deliver world-class innovation. We direct 10% of our turnover every year into R&D, and it's how we actually can deliver on our expanding portfolio and develop technology toolbox that enables us to create a stronger and more relevant, innovative solutions. We are truly a global company with a strong regional presence. And as one of the former speakers mentioned, then technology needs to be seen into context. I hope it comes. There we go. Why we are benefiting from local application centers and local talent. I was lucky yesterday to spend time with my colleagues here in the office in Nairobi. And it's truly remarkable to learn more about actually the great opportunities and potential of expanding our network to bring our solutions even more into play here in Kenya and in the region. I already had the pleasure of talking with some of the truly inspiring people whom we are collaborating with and potentially will actually do more with in the future. Some of them we'll hear here later on from Dr. Linda. And discuss how we actually can accelerate action and deliver impact through biosolutions. It will welcome more conversations in the coming day, and I really hope that everyone here has the opportunity to reach out and have those conversations. It's also clear when looking at this map that as many other multinationals, we have not focused equally on emerging markets and especially Africa as a region. Why we are looking at further expanding our footprint here as well. Our biosolutions are transforming the way that we all produce, consume, and live. I would like to provide a few examples that I believe are especially relevant in the context of transforming food systems globally and in this region. We reduce food waste by extending the shelf life of dairy products and bread. Bread in East African region has a higher sugar content compared to countries like South Africa. It's a palate preference, and in Novo Nordisk we produce an enzyme that allows producers to maintain the same sweet taste and texture while reducing the added sugar. We're also developing cultures used in producing an ambient shelf-stable yogurt, offering a healthy, convenient snack that meets the demand on-to-go consumption and address the short shelf life and cold chain challenges we have in the region as well. We're also providing pesticides, biopesticides, to markets all over the world to transition from petrochemical and into a more biological solution for the future. While we do all of this, we do to secure food for a growing population by making plants, crops more robust and enabling sustainable proteins. That way, we have actually saved millions of tons of CO2 by turning plants' waste into a range of products. As an example, our enzymes are used to produce low-carbon bioethanol all over the world, mainly using corn, sugar, and wheat as raw materials. However, we have also developed enzymes that enable bioenergy production from local crops such as cassava. There is a biosolutions for almost everything, at least we believe so. But we're also facing some stumbling blocks that hinder the full uptake of solutions that the bioeconomy can offer. Some of them have already been mentioned today by others, which I can only echo. But there's also a need to say it out loud and repeatedly to get to the message across. We're still seeing resistance, and it seems sometimes that climate action is slowing down. I believe that it's right now we need to go from talk to action. Last month I participated in New York Climate Week, and after today I'll be going to Colombia for COP16 on nature. To me, the process of climate and nature are examples of global agenda that is moving, however, modestly forward. I think those global events also show the state we're in right now. It's a lot of talk. What we really need is to accelerate action on the ground in countries and in local communities, exactly as the children this morning was demanding. That is exactly why I find it important to be here today and discuss how we actually move forward and bring our solutions to use with much more efficiency and in a larger scale. And we need to get this mindset that every degree counts. Now we're at a stage where we need to actually deliver on those promises. Countries, companies, and people as a whole, we need to do this in partnership. Companies are working internally on reducing emissions from operations and products. We're looking at our supply chain to identify Scope 3 emissions and to cut them in half. We're talking to suppliers, we're talking to customers. It is truly a big task ahead of us. But we cannot do this alone. We need public-private entities to form alliances, and we need governments to stop subsidizing the past. That is why Novo Nordisk, together with 112 other global companies, signed the COP29 letter from World Economic Forum's Alliance for Climate Leaders. Equally, we're participating with United Nations Global Compact to reform global access for biosolutions to markets. The message is clear. We need policies to embrace the solutions of the future, removing obstacles that hinder a rapid transition to a lower carbon economy. And we need to increase investments in clean technologies and scale up climate finance, including expansion of the use of carbon pricing. That is true for investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean hydrogen, and more. And it's especially true for biosolutions. If we only would apply the biosolutions that exist today and are ready to produce at scale to the full potential, we would reduce 8% of the global CO2 emissions, which equals 4.3 billion tons of CO2. So the good news is that actually the solutions are here. We have the ability to accelerate the sustainable transition. Now it's time to truly scale it up. Solutions to accelerate the sustainable transition in industries, transport, food systems with biosolutions already exist, and business are constantly innovating new solutions. But now it's time to accelerate the adaptation of existing solutions and step up to the commitments and let investments and capital direct to scale of existing sustainable solutions. We must also look at how we incentivize the sustainability transition. Today's subsidies are working against the sustainable transition, and subsidies are accelerating the problem. While regulation is slowing down, the speed of new solutions are being brought to scale. But we are seeing countries and regions moving ahead on bioeconomy, biomanufacturing, and biosolutions. In my opinion, it's becoming a competition of incentivizing industrial policies that actually countries are increasingly offering companies and investors, and perhaps even more importantly, talented minds. The potential is enormous. Boston Consulting Group projected that by 2040, we actually have more than $200 billion market for biosolutions in food, agriculture, and proteins, and for bio-based chemicals. But that would require 20 times more fermentation capacity as we have today to meet that demand. There you have a true business case. If you want, as a country, you're willing to invest for infrastructure to attract companies and to employ future generations. If we are to unleash the power of biotech, we need people with the right capabilities and imagination to solve difficult problems. It requires investment in the next generation of people that will power our economy forward. Half of the world's population is under 30, as we heard many times today. That's the largest share in human history. We need to embrace the voice of future, and we need fresh thinking, valuable insight, and refresh the drive of young people. This talks to the opportunity of the biosolutions sector in creating innovative ecosystems to foster a strong global bioeconomy. To make all of this happen, we need governments and business, science, civil society, investors to come together. Partnerships are essential to create innovative ecosystems for bioeconomy. We need alliances where people representing companies, NGOs, authorities, foundations, universities actually lay the groundwork for those ecosystems. The Global Bioeconomy Summit is a terrific example hereof, that we each come together with different perspectives, but we have the opportunity of combining our knowledge and make the road forward. In Denmark, Novo Nordisk has helped launching the Alliance of Biosolutions. It's an alliance between companies, think tanks, technology universities that are collaborating closely with the Danish government and ministers to formulate the national strategy on biosolutions. Because for Denmark, this is crucial. And we see other countries are pacing ahead. To name a few, United States, Brazil, South Korea, India, China are already formulating and implementing ambitious national strategies for bioeconomy and biomanufacturing. And we are moving from an environmental solution to a more national security and a competitive autonomy for each country. And these are the next generation strategies focused on tech-driven, highly value-adding bioeconomy that creates sustainable solutions and contribute to growth and sustainable jobs. Just last month, the G20 Bioeconomy Initiative launched 10 principles guiding bioeconomy strategies globally. And we are part of that movement, where governments are finally hearing what we have been trying to say for years. The potential of this sector is tremendous in terms of climate, nature, and impact, and creating jobs for the future. So I urge everyone who's here today to be a part of this movement as well. And now I'll hurry up, I can hear the sound in the background. But we need to accelerate the development as we're seeing. And we need continuously to make the case, educate, and create documentation for efficacy, innovation, and improve how we produce. This is how biosolutions can bring regulators forward to ensure biosolutions get to market faster and make a positive impact. Partnerships becomes pivotal in this journey. Quite simply, the magnitude and the complexity of the task ahead of us require that all stakeholders participate and collaborate. The only way we all succeed is by creating actually a sustainable future together. So I will leave here with 2 asks and 1 promise. We need to work together, private-public sector, to secure the generation and the next to actually have an accelerated impact. And we need regulation to be fit for future. We need to have the ability to recognize and enable biosolutions as an enabler for a transition. And finally, I'll promise to continue to expand our reach and impact in Africa, also on bioeconomy. Then I'm pretty confident that we actually ultimately can safeguard the future of people and planet for the generations to come. Thank you. No time for questions.
No time for questions. Well, thank you very much, Morten. What I took away from that presentation was the real need for us to lean not just into policy on bioeconomy, but to lean into solutions and the role of industry in helping us to generate solutions. And it's really exciting to see the progress that industry is making in biotechnology. I also took away the need for all of us to gain inspiration from our younger generations and to see how we can skill and equip people to be a part of this future, the future that includes bioeconomy and biotechnology. So thank you. Please join me with me in thanking Morten one more time. So I'm thrilled now to welcome our second speaker for the session, Dr. Kelly Seagraves. Dr. Seagraves is a senior advisor on biotechnology policy for the US Department of State in the Office of the Special Envoy for Critical and Emerging Technology. Kelly, the stage is yours.
There it is. All right. Thank you, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. As Ian introduced me, I'm Dr. Kelly Seagraves. I'm a neuroscientist by academic background, moved into government service a couple of years ago, and am currently senior advisor for biotechnology policy in the US State Department's Office of the Special Envoy for Critical and Emerging Technology. So this is our equivalent of the Foreign Ministry, and our office is really charged with coordinating critical and emerging technology policy across the department. And I myself coordinate that biotechnology and bioeconomy policy. So today, I would really like to talk to you a little bit about US policy regarding bioeconomy, and then walk you through some examples focusing on biomanufacturing infrastructure that we've recently been standing up. I want to emphasize at the top that these are just examples. They're certainly not all-encompassing of what the United States is doing. And the reason I'm presenting them here today is to provide food for thought on the types of projects that could move us from talking to action, getting us to that infrastructure that we need in order to actually have the biomanufacturing capacity that we're going to need to support the bioeconomy. Okay. So just to start, the policy that the United States is currently implementing is following an executive order that was released in September of 2022. A few folks have mentioned it today, so I think you might be familiar with it. But it covers a wide range of different issue sets. Some of them are listed here on the slide. I won't read them all, but this includes things like improving access to high-quality data, expanding biomanufacturing capacity and infrastructure, and training a diverse and skilled workforce. Since 2022, in the release of this executive order, the US government interagencies, so all of our departments and agencies working together, have released a number of public reports on different aspects of our bioeconomy policy. These reports really assess what our current infrastructure is and also look at some gaps that we have. I encourage you to look at them if you're interested in ideas for how to maybe assess your own ecosystems or to look at some of the gaps that you also might share with us. That can be helpful in thinking about ways that we can collaborate together. In order to implement the policies that are set out in these reports, in March of this year, we set up something called the National Bioeconomy Board. This is an interagency board that works together to implement the things that we have found in those public reports. It's a total of 12 different departments and agencies, and I think that this really represents the whole of government effort that the United States has to support our bioeconomy. All right, so moving on to focusing on some of those biomanufacturing infrastructure examples. I don't think that this audience really needs this particular slide to explain what biomanufacturing is, but I did include it because we've got a really great quote here from one of our legislative members that highlights that biomanufacturing can scale up innovations happening in laboratories across America, diversify our supply chains, and provide good paying jobs to workers with diverse skill sets throughout the country. I put this here because we do have strong bipartisan support for biotechnology and the bioeconomy, and I think getting our legislative bodies involved is really important for finding that funding that we need to build up our infrastructure. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire go through some examples around this diagram that I have here, starting with some examples from fundamental research, going through biomanufacturing infrastructure, and then last, touching on some marketplace development. All right, so our National Science Foundation is one of the leading agencies, government agencies for funding basic research, and generally we fund a lot of domestic research. We also fund research where we have collaborations with foreign partners, and I'm highlighting on this slide that we launched this year some global centers on the bioeconomy, which are really focused on harnessing that collaborative work that we can do together around the world for bioeconomy solutions. Next, I want to highlight, just in August of this year, the National Science Foundation announced that it was investing in biofoundries for helping researchers access the resources, the laboratory facilities that they need in order to try and come up with biotechnology and biomanufacturing solutions. I'm bringing this up because these are kind of like core facilities. It enables researchers from a number of different places to go use the same facilities and is one way that we can help to de-risk research at the basic level. Next, moving on to biomanufacturing infrastructure with our Department of Energy, I wanted to highlight here the 2023 Billion Ton Report. This is a report that reflects analysis, particularly from the Department of Energy, looking at the current biomass supply in the United States and also projecting out how much biomass we think that we might be able to produce. So in the quote at the bottom, it says, similar to previous iterations, there's been 3 previous iterations of this report, we conclude that the United States has the potential to sustainably produce more than 1 billion tons of biomass feedstock given adequate market conditions. The actual quantities produced will depend on market demand, technical advances, and local conditions. The Department of Energy is really invested in making sure that market demand and local conditions are met. One of the ways, it's hard to know when the slide will actually change. One of the ways that we're doing that is, or the Department of Energy is doing that, is through this Regional Biomass Resource Hub initiative. So the United States is a really big country, and we have context-specific biomass depending on different regions, different climates, different environments. So this Regional Biomass Resource Hub initiative is, there we go, is meant to provide resources regionally to help regions stand up their own biomanufacturing supply chains. Now, we do, as we're thinking about these supply chains, we want to move from what I have on the left, these kind of primarily single feedstock type facilities, to what I have on the right, a more multi-feedstock processing depots, to make the logistics easier and more sustainable. And one way the Department of Energy is, now it's like over-responsive. One of the ways that the Department of Energy is trying to also de-risk this process is through something called the Biomass Feedstock National User Facility. So similar to what I was talking about with the National Science Foundation and the BioFoundries work, this is a facility where users can come in from around the country in order to help do research and design on different biomanufacturing processes. So it's really a testing facility, and that can help them to not have to invest in the pilot scale. They can do the testing at this facility and then go implement it in their region. And then one last thing I wanted to highlight from the Department of Energy is that the department has recently announced a major loan for this private company, BioForge. The only reason I'm putting it up here is that we are implementing more loan programs in order to, again, try and de-risk the implementation of large-scale facilities. We know that these are incredibly capital-intensive at the beginning, before products are being produced. And so this is one of the ways that we want to make sure that that capital is available for companies to be able to scale up, put their products out on the market, and then start to get their own capital flowing in. All right, moving to the Department of Defense. Now, I know it might seem a little counterintuitive to be talking about the Department of Defense and what it's doing for the bioeconomy, but in the United States, we have a really strong history of important or societally impactful technologies coming out of Department of Defense investments and research, and I don't think that the bioeconomy is going to be any different. One of the projects I wanted to highlight is this Manufacturing Innovation Institute called BioMade. This is a public-private partnership, which again is trying to de-risk the upscaling of small companies. So by joining this public-private partnership, they get access to information, to resources, including ultimately facilities. The project is currently working on scaling up some facilities that users can come, or small companies can use, especially at the pilot scale. And we think that this is ultimately going to be very impactful. On this slide, I'm just highlighting a few of the different types of products that members of the BioMade Consortium are working on producing. I'm not going to read them all, but a few of them include things like bioplastics and durable fibers without microplastics, growable cement and alternatives to natural rubber to make tires, or bio-based fire-resistant composite materials. So while all of these help our Department of Defense to be more ecologically friendly and sustainable, they also are expected to have a strong societal impact and consumer base once those companies are able to get up to a commercial scale. The Department of Defense also recently announced this initiative for fortifying domestic supply chains with decentralized bioindustrial manufacturing infrastructure. This is a new program this year focused on the Department of Defense funding specific small or non-traditional companies, similar to BioMade, but more directing funding mechanisms. And it's something that they're really excited about, and so wanted to make sure that I'm highlighting that here today. All right, turning to our US Department of Agriculture, very similarly to the Department of Energy and Department of Defense, the US Department of Agriculture is also trying to figure out how to fund biomanufacturing infrastructure. In their case, this is again focused on loans-based programs. So one of them is this biorefinery, renewable chemicals, and bio-based product manufacturing assistance program, and which is very specifically focused on bioeconomy type projects. The other one that I'm highlighting here is their business and industry loan guarantees. These are not necessarily bioeconomy focused, but they are focused on rural businesses. The US Department of Agriculture is incredibly focused on supporting our rural communities and farmers, and this is one of the ways that they can do it, including for projects that will ultimately impact our bioeconomy. And then the last program that I wanted to highlight here is one that actually has been running for 20 years, the US Department of Agriculture's BioPreferred program. This is a program that helps to create markets. So when thinking back to that slide where I had that kind of circular diagram of the biomanufacturing kind of life cycle from research development, biomanufacturing, and then to market, this is really focused on that market piece. So at this point in time, over the last 20 years, we've got over 2,000 companies that participate in this program. When they have a product registered, which I have been told is quite easy, that it's a matter of months to get your product registered. That then enables those companies to label the product as USDA certified bio-based products. I have an example of the label on this slide. They also qualify for mandatory federal purchasing. So we do have some mandatory federal purchasing of bio-based products, which I think one of the earlier speakers today mentioned that this is one of the ways that we can help to de-risk the commercialization of products by mandating that there is a customer in the federal government. All right, and then you may have noticed on that slide that there are 55 countries that have products in the BioPreferred catalog. I went into the catalog. There's a Googleable BioPreferred program kind of companies map, and found the first country, alphabetically, that has a product in the system, which happens to be Argentina. And so I really encourage you from wherever you are coming from around the world, if you have companies that are interested in participating in this program, again, I've heard it's fairly straightforward, and we really encourage companies to reach out and register their products, get that labeling, and at least for the US federal government, have a guaranteed buyer. So with that, I'm gonna pause there and just say thank you so much again. I think that this event, the discussions that we're having are incredibly important. I'm very proud to be working on them. And I really appreciate your time hearing about how the US is covering these issues. And as someone from the State Department, it's really my job to help form connections between the US government and our programs and those of whichever country you happen to be coming from today. And so I encourage you, if you're interested in forming those collaborations or talking more or finding the right partners in the United States, please don't hesitate to reach out. Very happy to have those discussions and make those connections. Thank you.
Well, it's really quite something to see the focus that the US has on the biomanufacturing sector really laid out in such detail, and the approach of being systematic and whole of government focused, crossing over from areas like government procurement, feedstock development, and really leaning into scaling biotechnology solutions. I think there's lots of elements of the US policy that I'm sure speak to all of us in our own contexts. So thank you, Kelly. Please join me with me in thanking Kelly one more time. Our third speaker for this session is Dr. Linda Davis, founder and CEO of Giraffe Bioenergy. Linda's based in Kenya and is a passionate advocate for clean cooking fuels and sustainable development in East Africa. Over to you. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and welcome to Kenya. It is my pleasure to give you an example of what we're doing in the bioeconomy in Kenya. As introduced, my name is Linda Davis. I'm a Kenyan national. By academic background, I went to school just up the road and studied food science and technology for my first degree. And then I migrated to Sydney, Australia, where I studied a master's degree in microbiology. And then eventually that became a PhD in microbiology biotechnology. Then I migrated to the United States, where I worked in the ethanol industry. And as you well know, that is the largest producer of ethanol fuel just after Brazil. And while in the United States, I learned about the use case of ethanol for cooking and how it had wonderful potential to stop the detrimental effects to health, environment, and climate in Africa and specifically Kenya. So after being in the diaspora for 20 years, it was time for me to come back home and participate in creating an ethanol cooking fuel bioeconomy. So I'm going to start my remarks by telling you who we are, what we do, where we do what we do, and some of the challenges that we experience. And then I will show you a short video, 3 minutes, so you can see what we're doing in Kilifi County. So starting by who we are. So Giraffe Bioenergy is a company, a private company focused on the mission of substituting imports of ethanol cooking fuel to Kenya. The problem that we're solving is that many communities are transitioning away from charcoal and firewood without having clean, safe, accessible cooking fuel, right? So what we're doing exactly in the bioeconomy is we are establishing large-scale cassava agriculture as a platform for food and ethanol cooking fuel. And we are catalyzing rural bioeconomies and elevating women as vital drivers of economic development. In a nutshell, that is our mission and vision. And I'd like to share a story around some of the challenges that we are experiencing at Giraffe Bioenergy. As I mentioned, my background is microbiology, biotechnology, really looking at large-scale establishment of biorefineries producing ethanol. As you may well know, ethanol is an elegant molecule. It has use cases in, as I've told you, cooking, in transportation, as an industrial solvent, et cetera, et cetera. So I came here bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after being away for 20 years, and I said, I'm going to put down a biorefinery, and as I did in the United States, where I was also a principal investigator in a lignocellulosic ethanol plant, where the Department of Energy awarded me $50 million for for putting on an innovative biorefinery that was using agricultural waste. So with those lofty dreams and ideas, I come back to Kenya and I thought, I just need to order cassava, right? The feedstock of cassava. It might take 1 or 2 years for people to produce the volumes that we had. Shock on me. We did not even have proper seedlings. We did not have disease-resistant, drought-resistant seedlings. Why do I bring this up? Because as a policy at Giraffe Bioenergy, we will not go anywhere near agricultural land. We are going to land that is semi-arid and that experiences irregular rainfall patterns. And that is a community that we choose to work with because we want to stay well away from debates around food versus fuel. So we have a big challenge. We come into very depleted soils, deforested environments where the community is in a cycle of self-destruction because they're using the trees and natural resources to create charcoal and firewood for cooking, which eventually becomes a leading killer of women and children. So when we come into these communities, we have to restore the land. We have to plant trees. We have to bring in regenerative agriculture. We do intercropping with beans. We bring back the trees, and we educate the women that work with us. And they learn how to be good cassava agricultural practitioners, right? So that is one of the challenges that we had. We have to work with land that is not productive and make it productive over a number of years. Challenge number one. The other challenge that I spoke about in a panel this morning is if you look at examples of other geographies, if you have an idea, chances are you have the underlying infrastructure that allows you to overlay that idea. I'll give you an example. If for the tech people around here, if you want to create Uber or Shopify or something like that, you don't have to create the underlying infrastructure like Google location, right? Google has already figured that out. You've got the map application, so you can just overlay your idea on that. You certainly don't have to build roads because the US government or whatever governments have built the roads for you. So you have the underlying infrastructure ready for you to just plug and play your idea. But that's not the case when you're creating rural bioeconomies. We have tremendous challenges, and those challenges are mainly around infrastructure. Because if you go to the rural areas, by definition in Kenya, in the areas where we work, semi-arid, economically underdeveloped, then we do not have the road infrastructure. We do not have the water infrastructure, right? So therefore, you cannot have productive agriculture that is irrigated, that is necessary for high-yielding crops. We have an education challenge as well. Because again, we're in the rural areas. A lot of these women do not have opportunity to go to school. A lot of the youth who come do not have an opportunity to have high school graduation and certainly limited higher tertiary education. So you're confronted with those three key challenges that other jurisdictions do not necessarily have to overcome before they overlay the idea. And in our case, the idea was building a biorefinery. So that is one challenge that I would like to ask the policymakers around here to really support and see bioeconomies as cross-cutting. In Europe and in the US, you probably don't have to have the foundational policies to build on the bioeconomy policy, but here we have to look at the bioeconomy policy not in isolation, but as critical, right, to actually enable other policies that together will create this bioeconomy. The other challenge that I face, and I'm just going to speak to two challenges as the moderator challenged us to do, is that of financing. Again, I've read you my credentials. I was working in the United States, principal investigator, $50 million, Department of Energy, Department of USDA in the US. I'm a Kenyan national. I come to Kenya, I could not raise funding for a solution as obvious as what I think it is. It's pretty obvious, right? We've got vast amount of land that is not utilized. We've got skilled and semi-skilled labor. We've got the demand. 1.5 million Kenyans currently are using ethanol. Where is that ethanol from? Imported from the global markets. And yet we can create a local agricultural industry there. So there you go. We've got the demand. And lastly, we also have the political will. Kenya has decided as a target in 2030 to achieve clean cooking, universal clean cooking for all, that 30% of the community, that is 4.5 million households, will be transitioned to ethanol. 50% to LPG, I know you're curious. That's number one. And then 30% to ethanol, 10% to electric cooking, and then the remainder will be on biomass. So the political will is there. So all the ingredients are there, 4 ingredients. And yet, I could not raise funding for 5 years because Africa is too risky. So I'm not going to expound too much on that, but I really want to build on comments from my brother here from Novozymes, from Novo, the new name, that partnership is the way to go. You know, the public partnerships, if you've got any influence whatsoever, really understanding that the bioeconomy is really the future for Africa and certainly the future for Kenya. And I'm very, very pleased to be in this particular space. I'm going to request the video. It's only 2 minutes, so you can see. So perhaps you can come to Kilifi County in Kenya, and you can see what we have to do in the cassava value chain, building the seedling system, starting the large-scale agriculture, and then eventually the biorefinery. So what is my ask? We are proceeding to project financing. We've had to build the seedling system and the agricultural system on impact funds, which are very, very expensive, equity. And now we are looking for blended financing for our first ever cassava to ethanol biorefinery, creating a rural bioeconomy in using $20 million to bring our biorefinery to life in 2026. So without further ado, I really would like to have the video start, and it's only 20 minutes. Giraffe Bioenergy is on a mission to address climate change and the lack of clean cooking fuel in Kenya. And how we do that is by integrating proven agricultural technologies and ethanol manufacturing. And we will be producing ethanol cooking fuel, which has emerged as an acceptable, clean, safe, and affordable solution to charcoal and kerosene. Giraffe Bioenergy, we are establishing our own cassava supply, and we are doing this in 3 modules. The first is a nucleus farm that we own and operate. The second is smallholder farmers that will be complementary to our own estates. Giraffe Bioenergy will use proven technology to harvest cassava, aggregate it, and process it to on-spec ethanol cooking fuel for distribution through established last-mile channel to low-income communities that tend to live in high-density urban and peri-urban environments. Cooking with charcoal and kerosene has detrimental effects to our health and to our environment. And the problem particularly affects women who carry the burden of cooking. And those that use charcoal are inconvenienced by just the drudgery of using charcoal. But most importantly, the emissions from charcoal and firewood are detrimental to health. Charcoal is a leading driver of deforestation through illegal logging. And that in itself is a driver to food insecurity and climate change within Kenya. Ethanol cooking fuel is currently enjoyed by thousands of households in Kenya. And yet, the ethanol that we use is imported from the global markets. All this despite the fact that Kenya has vast amount of land, skilled and semi-skilled labor, low production costs, a high demand for ethanol, as I mentioned, and most importantly, the political will to achieve universal clean cooking for all Kenyans. At Giraffe Bioenergy, we stand for food and fuel. We will ensure that we enhance food security by the use of cassava at large scale, ensuring that families in our areas of operation do not go hungry. Secondly, our systems will provide decent work and sustainable incomes in underserved markets. So we can prevent forex externalization and catalyze our communities with good paying jobs in the rural areas.
Our crop of interest is cassava. Currently, it has gained potential as an industrial crop. We all know that cassava initially has been propagated using the stem cuttings. Giraffe Bioenergy has developed a rapid multiplication technology. The technology is very versatile, producing so many planting materials over a short period of time. Now, we are telling our women not to cut trees. Cassava does well in marginalized soil, areas which are vulnerable to low rainfall. Doesn't need a lot of fertilizer for you to grow cassava. It also needs low input. So if it is characterized by low input, it means at the end of the day, our energy is going to be economical for the rural bioeconomies.
Giraffe Bioenergy imenitoa mbali kwa sababu nilikuwa niko mahali pabaya. Saa hii niko mahali pazuri. Nimeenda training, kadro, na saa hii ninapata kipato changu kizuri, ninakula mara 3 kwa siku, na ninawekeza pesa zangu kwa account, na hata nikaamua kujumuika na kina mama wenzangu, niposo na waona hapa tunajumuika kwa shamba.
We recognize and leverage the key role that women must play across the value chain, both as participants in cassava production and as beneficiaries of ethanol cooking fuel. We are motivated to work on gender equality by providing sustainable incomes in the rural areas. Women that work with Giraffe Bioenergy are already sharing stories of how working with Giraffe Bioenergy has shown impact in their livelihoods. And we wish to scale so this impact can reach women all across Kilifi County for the benefit of our communities. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Linda, for that inspiring story. I guess that's an excellent example of how cross-cutting bioeconomy is, and how a systemic approach to addressing the multiple benefits of bioeconomy can really support community engagement and community support. I also took note of that interesting comment you made around the need for bioeconomy policy infrastructure, and I think that might be something that we should reflect a bit more on over the course of the next day or two. That brings us to the end of our keynote speakers session. We do have a video message coming up next from Frank Leroy, the President of the Grand Est region of France. And at the conclusion of the video message, I'll be handing over to Mary Maxon, who will be taking us through the panel session. So can we please cue the video? Thank you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Franck Leroy et je suis président de la région Grand Est. Chers professeurs, membres du comité d'organisation du Global Bioeconomy Summit 2024, mesdames et messieurs les dirigeants, décideurs publics et privés, chers participants, permettez-moi de vous présenter mes excuses de ne pouvoir être présent physiquement parmi vous aujourd'hui pour le sommet mondial de la bioéconomie qui se tient cette année à Nairobi. Nairobi, véritable cœur de la Silicon Savannah et centre d'innovation en Afrique, joue un rôle majeur dans la promotion de solutions pour la bioéconomie. Je suis honoré de partager à travers ce message la vision et l'engagement de la région Grand Est dans le développement d'une bioéconomie durable à travers 3 éléments: le Grand Est comme territoire d'opportunité et d'innovation, la bioéconomie comme réponse aux défis globaux et locaux, et enfin la nécessité d'une ambition partagée. La région Grand Est, située au cœur de l'Europe entre Paris et Strasbourg, est un territoire dynamique et innovant. Créée en 2016, elle fait 2 fois la taille de la Belgique ou presque et compte 5,5 millions d'habitants. Notre région est riche en ressources naturelles avec 90% de son territoire en forêt, terres agricoles et 2 vignobles d'exception, les vins d'Alsace et bien entendu le champagne. Grâce à sa position géographique et ses frontières avec 4 pays européens, elle bénéficie d'un potentiel unique d'échanges économiques et scientifiques, notamment dans le domaine de la bioéconomie. À l'instar de Nairobi, qui œuvre pour redevenir la Green City in the Sun par la gestion durable des déchets et le reboisement, le Grand Est s'engage à restaurer et protéger ses ressources naturelles tout en promouvant une bioéconomie qui répond aux impératifs environnementaux. Depuis 2016, nous avons fait de la bioéconomie une priorité stratégique, car nous croyons en son potentiel pour relever les défis globaux tels que le changement climatique et la transition énergétique, mais aussi pour contribuer au développement local de tous nos territoires. Notre stratégie s'articule autour de 4 piliers: sécurité alimentaire, santé des écosystèmes, bioproduits et souveraineté énergétique. Ces principes guident nos actions vers une économie du vivant, résiliente et durable. Cela se décline très concrètement à travers nos 5 priorités que sont les bioénergies, les biointrants, les fibres végétales, les protéines du futur et enfin la chimie du végétal et les biotechnologies. Le thème de ce sommet, One Planet Sustainable Bioeconomy Solutions for Global Challenges, résonne fortement avec notre approche. Notre région est reconnue comme un des leaders européens avec un écosystème de recherche performant, le pôle de biocompétitivité Bioeconomy for Change et un club de start-up regroupant une centaine d'entreprises innovantes. Nous avons structuré 8 bioraffineries territoriales pour soutenir le développement industriel durable avec l'emblématique plateforme de Bazancourt-Pomac et des projets de pointe comme After Biochem. Pour appuyer notre politique en matière d'économie du vivant, nous mobilisons 40 millions d'euros par an en cohérence avec les stratégies françaises et européennes de bioéconomie. J'en profite pour saluer le rôle pionnier et décisif de l'Union européenne pour que la bioéconomie joue un rôle clé dans la décarbonation de l'économie pour la souveraineté et la compétitivité de notre continent. Un rôle engagé dès 2012 qu'il faudra poursuivre demain. C'est pourquoi nous avons tissé des alliances solides avec nos voisins européens, nos centres de recherche et le secteur privé pour co-développer des solutions innovantes. Je pense notamment au Bade-Württemberg, avec qui nous travaillons sur la décarbonation des bâtiments grâce aux matériaux biosourcés. Nos actions se construisent en associant l'ensemble des acteurs, de l'amont à l'aval, des producteurs à leur valorisation, qu'elle soit alimentaire comme non alimentaire, dans une vision systémique, filière par filière. L'Afrique, et particulièrement le Kenya, se distingue par son immense potentiel de bioressources et son dynamisme en matière de bioéconomie. En accueillant le Global Bioeconomy Summit 2024, Nairobi démontre le rôle central de l'Afrique dans la construction d'une bioéconomie mondiale durable. Comme l'a dit Ban Ki-moon, ancien secrétaire général des Nations Unies, nous n'avons qu'une seule planète, il n'y a pas de plan B, car il n'y a pas de planète B. C'est dans cet esprit que nous avançons déterminés à promouvoir une bioéconomie innovante et durable, en harmonie avec notre environnement et bénéfique pour nos citoyens. Le Grand Est est résolu à être un acteur clé de cette transition mondiale vers une économie plus verte, en partenariat avec les acteurs internationaux. Je suis convaincu que vos travaux contribueront à renforcer ces liens et à développer des solutions durables pour notre planète. Merci de votre attention et à bientôt, je l'espère, dans la région Grand Est.
Wow, what a great series of keynote presentations. Let's thank those speakers one more time. Wow, this is just terrific. Speaking of terrific, we have a terrific and diverse panel lined up for you today. They're going to give some short presentations, and then we're going to have a discussion. So as I introduce them very briefly, I'll also be welcoming them to the stage. So they will come up to the stage and take their seats in order, and then we will get started with our presentations. First up today, we have Dr. Lily Uwalajit, Assistant Executive Director, National Energy Technology Center, National Science and Technology Development Agency, based in Thailand. Next, we have Nicolo Giocomucci Moore, Executive Director, Bio-Based Europe, and he's based in Belgium. Next up, we have Jung Ko, Program Manager, Nature and Climate Finance, UN Environment Program. She joins us all the way from Kenya. And next up, Mandla Nkomo, Chief Executive Officer, Partners in Food Solutions, and he comes to us today from Zimbabwe. Last but certainly not least, we have Haley Chantar. Haley joins us from Malta. She's a law graduate, a European Commission Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador. She's a podcaster who hosts the podcast series Bioeconomy Matters, and she's a young farmer. Welcome, everyone. We've asked all of our panelists to provide introductory remarks on the topic of our session, and this is the innovation ecosystem for the bioeconomy, for about 3 minutes each. That means we'll have about 15 minutes of talks that you'll hear. Some of our panelists have opted to use slides today, and some have not. And so first among them today is Lily, and Lily will be speaking to us with a pointer. With that, welcome, Lily.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, IACGB, for the opportunity for me to be here. Can you hear? Right, okay. So how do I put this? Maybe this? Oh, okay. This is, okay, that's me. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm honored to share with you today Thailand's bio-circular green economy policy, which is one of the national policy of Thailand approved in 2021. And I also will share with you the BCG in action, as well as the the regional partnership that under the BCG concept. So within 3 minutes. So basically, the BCG policy integrates the bioeconomy, circular economy, and green economy, as you can see from that. And it supports Thailand's goal of carbon neutrality by 2050, as well as net zero emission by 2065. It leveraged Thailand's biological and cultural diversity using science, technology, and innovation to gain the competitive advantage in the areas shown down there: food, agriculture, material energy, health, medicine, and tourism. And actually, I'm from NTech, which is part of NSTDA, National Science Technology Development Agency, or NSTDA. And actually, we focus on energy innovation and also contribute to the energy section of the BCG policy. So this second slide also shows that the Thailand's strength in the microbial biodiversity, which is the key asset to developing of bioeconomy of Thailand. Well, one of the key assets anyway. In Thailand, as you know, we have like a high diversity of microbials, but one of the key issue would be the management of microbial resources. And we have Thailand Bioresource Research Center managed by NSTDA. Here, we ensure the access of the microbial resources, as well as a high throughput screening facility, as well as the production facility to support the industry of Thailand, various from animal feed, biofuel, biorefinery, green processing, as well as special enzymes. So you can see that the microbial enzymes is a key factor for industrial application in Thailand, and I hope that maybe I can come back to the second round and maybe have a chance to talk about that. So Thailand is also the part of ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, consists of 10 countries as shown here. And we are all in the, we call biodiversity hotspot. So with that, it is, with biodiversity is a key issue for the bioeconomy. So by sharing knowledge and technology, ASEAN countries can transform this biodiversity into high-value bio-based products, enhancing the region's role in bioeconomy. So with this, there are two important networks called ASEAN Network on Microbial Utilization, or ANMICRO, and the other network called ASEAN BCG Network. And these actually bring together several member countries, build capacity, manage of microbial resources, and promote bioeconomy through training and collaborative work. And so this collaboration actually strengthens the ASEAN's role in sustainable bioeconomy, and it may play an important model as for the global collaboration as well. So that's what I want to share for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. And it's really great to see microbial biodiversity leading the way for solutions in the bioeconomy. Next up, we're going to hear from Nicolo, and I have to say, for those of you who know me, you know I'm a huge fan of the CBE. This is a great honor for me to hear about it in person. Over to you.
Thanks a lot for the warm welcome. I'm very happy to be here at the Global Bioeconomy Summit. I have very few slides for you, just explaining what CBE is and does. And I think that this first slide is particularly important because we decided some time ago to focus on a competitive bioeconomy for a sustainable future. This is really the spirit of the conference today, looking ahead and trying to make the difference for the planet going forward. So what is CBE-JU joint undertaking? Is a European partnerships between the European Commission and the Bio-Based Industries Consortium. So we have two actors that contribute equally to the mission of CBE joint undertaking. The European Commission is putting European funding, and the industry commits to put equivalent money on the table within the projects in kind. The CBE-JU so far founded, together with its predecessor BBI joint undertaking, almost 200 projects. We fund projects that go from the lower TRLs, so TRL 4 and 5, up to the demonstration scale, so the pilot demonstration, up to the flagship biorefineries, where we find that several of them around Europe, over 15, 16 of them are around Europe. I say 15, 16 because actually one project built two flagship biorefineries, one in Spain and one in Italy. So far you see the numbers on the screen. We funded over 1.1 billion euro of project with European money, and this leveraged almost 3 billion euro of industrial investment. This is a huge, what we call leverage. It means that the European funding has been a key to attract the private funding and also other type of funding like venture capitals, for example. What we do is really to focus on the scaling up of technologies towards the market. One more slide. This is actually a map of where the action of CBE-JU have been implemented. You have the small usine, the small fabric is the biorefineries that are all over Europe, as you can see them. And with the circle are indicated the demonstration plants. There are many more. So we are over 100 demonstration plants that have been realized in Europe. And most of them work on different technologies. They touch very different sectors, from bio-based chemicals to textile, bio-based plant protein, for example, microalgae. They work on agri-biomass, forestry biomass, aquatic biomass, biogenic CO2. So a really wide range of projects have been funded through CBE-JU, and we have more coming in the very near future. I wanted to cite one example that for me is particularly nice also because it's the first one I went to see with my own eyes when I took up the duties as executive director, and it's the same that Frank Leroy mentioned before in the north of France. It's called After Biochem. And actually this project uses residues of the sugar beet cultivation to make organic acids. So and these organic acids are then used in a series of applications from cosmetics to food. And actually this biorefinery that you see in the picture there has reduced by 80% the emissions of a normal plant that produces with traditional chemistry organic acids, which is an extremely important result. And also the two byproducts that actually get out of there are clean water and fertilizer, bio-based fertilizer. So it's really a very nice project. We contributed with a considerable funding, as you can see, but of course this allowed, as I was mentioning before, much more investment to top up this funding and to make this project a reality today. So I would close here and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Niccolò. It's really great to see public-private partnerships for the bioeconomy pulling private capital off the sidelines working together. It's really quite inspirational. And now we're going to hear from Jung, who's going to tell us more about her work at the intersection of bioeconomy and environment.
It's a pleasure to be here today, and I've definitely learned a lot from the panels and also the workshops during the day, and also from the plenaries here. My name is Jung Chu, so I'm a program manager in the Climate Change Division of the United Nations Environment Program based here in Nairobi. So my work is mainly focused on mobilizing finance, both public and private, into nature, into climate, and also improving livelihoods. You know, from the United Nations perspective, we normally start at the global level. So when we're talking about the bioeconomy future, I also want to start, if we look at the global level, based on the 2023 edition of the State of Finance for Nature report from UNEP, you will see that we have $200 billion went into potentially nature positive outcome. And we've also seen a slightly increase year by year in the past few years. So this is the good news. But if we look at where we need to be in 2050 to meet all the targets for climate, nature, pollution, everything, we need to quadruple this amount. So you may think that's a lot of money, where do we get the money from? But the answer is the money is already in the economy. You know, the report we have, it's already been quoted in some of the workshops already, because if you look at the investment already went into nature negative, that's almost $7 trillion. So it's not just about the amount of money, but where the money should go. And if we don't deal with the investment going into the nature negative, we'll always be in the negative. So, and then if we dig a little deeper in the statistics, so we'll see majority of the investment are actually from the public source, either domestic or ODA or just international development in general. So there's definitely a big role for private sectors who come and play. And then if you look at the nature negative investment, there's a lot of environmental harmful subsidies going into agriculture, going into energy, fisheries, etc. So, you know, we really need to, when we're talking about mobilizing finance, we really need to work with both public and private sector, you know, working together. And so from the United Nations perspective, obviously we work quite a lot with governments. So we help governments on doing their national strategies, roadmaps, and also developing sustainable budgeting tools. We also work with the Ministry of Agriculture, Energy, trying to repurpose the harmful subsidies, and also trying to build a business case to prove you can reallocate the subsidies into renewable sources, and you can still have the energy security, create new jobs, and then have additional environmental impact. But we also realize many developing countries, the fiscal space is actually getting very small. So many countries are looking at additional resources or where to look for the funding. And there is a growing interest on things like debt for nature swap, debt for climate swap. So we're also looking at how we can actually help government in this effort. And then on the private sector side, risk is a big thing for private sector investment. There's a lot of political risk, there are market risk, there are climate and biodiversity risk from the supply chain. There's also uncertainty in return, etc. And all of this will actually, at the end of the day, turn into financial risks. So obviously, we need the regulatory framework, the incentives to be there, but at the same time, we also need the finance. We need the concessional finance to really go in and help them. But obviously, that's only from the investor's perspective, but we also need the pipeline of projects where the interventions. So, through our different projects and initiatives, we're also trying to build a pipeline of projects in developing countries, help the local startups to really grow their business in the restoration field, in the bioeconomy field. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're hearing a theme here about public and private working together, and I have to say I'm a little bit relieved to hear that the money's already in the economy. That's great. We just have to figure out how to get it and where to put it. Okay, so now we're going to hear from Mandla.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. And I think, I've listened to my co-panelists, and a lot of the presentation talking about the bioeconomy as a whole and in general. I just want to bring us all maybe back to terra firma, down to earth, and look at the bioeconomy from a food system perspective. And some of the things that I would like to share are really concerned with that aspect of the food system, and to say that it is the intersection point of a lot of the conversations that we're having, because the food system, and in particular food processors, are right at the center of the energy conversation for running factories. They're at the center of, processing these bioresources into safe, healthy, and nutritious food. But at the same time, they are generating a lot of waste that potentially could create opportunities for creating other products. And I think what we find is that there's a lot of opportunities and challenges. And the opportunities and the challenges are really factored around the issue around food loss and waste. How do we, in the food system, particularly with food processors, contribute to the food loss and waste conversation? What are the technologies that we can adopt that can contribute to a solution? The issue is really that from a bioresource perspective, there's a concentration of a particular set of food crops. How do we expand that away from just the wheat, cassava, maize, and start to look at other crops? And the US State Department, as you know, has launched the vision for adapted crops and soils, and there's a lot of very interesting crops in there. But the question that remains is, how do we make a case for these crops to find their way into people's plates? How do we create a system that can do that? And what role can we in the processing sector actually play in creating that demand pool, but also placing attractive products in front of consumers? Because without people, this transition or this bioeconomy-based transition might not happen. And we need to respond, as we are doing that, to the real and present issue of hunger and malnutrition, particularly in Africa. It cannot be that the bioeconomy conversation does not touch on the fact that over a third of Africans are probably going to bed hungry every day. How do we make sure that we are tweaking the system to respond to that? And finally, to really encourage, dietary diversity. The opportunities are many, and those opportunities are about technology, those opportunities are about improving safety, and those opportunities are about improving the interconnectedness of particularly rural economies and urban economies. Africa is urbanizing. In my lifetime, 70% of Africans will live in cities. Therefore, they are far removed from the food the production of the food that they consume. What could we do to respond to that? Okay, all right. Well, in my previous life, I worked for the CG, and one of the things that we worked on was how do we create these innovating ecosystems? Because one of the weaknesses we currently have in this bioeconomy transition is that the good research that has been done often struggles to get to people who can take it to scale and deliver, real societal benefits. And then what we find is that the entities like the NGOs, the private companies, particularly in the African continent, that are interfacing with communities and so forth, do not have the capacity to deliver even some of this great technology when it's available. So how do we create an innovating ecosystem that is deliberate, that is targeting specific actors, and ensuring that there's a movement of resources that can drive this transition that we're looking for? From our own work within PFS, is we've learned that the first thing we need to focus on is how do we make this a hyper-local agenda. In that little village in Kilifi, where my sister is trying to put up a biorefinery or bioreactor, how do we create an innovative ecosystem around the bioeconomy that is hyper-local, where the stakeholders in that economy are seeing the full benefit? Not so much to produce something to take out of the community, but also to benefit the community itself. To do that, I think we need to build a close connection to the indigenous knowledge systems and the innovative scientific community that is doing a lot of work in this space. Because what we find is that some of the stuff that we're discussing around dietary biodiversity and so forth, there are already solutions in communities, but they are not being scaled because someone has not come to connect the relevant technology to take what is normally done in someone's kitchen in a low-tech way, but to actually do it in a scalable way that can service markets in Nairobi. How do we connect indigenous knowledge systems and actually modern technologies? And one of those things is to really create conversations, create handshakes. Our experience as PFS is that the handshakes between global food companies, global science groups, and entities on the African continent that are producing the food that people consume is one way of doing this. And we can improve this by facilitating more connections between the global expertise that are out there and the local executors on the ground. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mandla, for focusing us on the food system and the importance of connecting modern technologies to indigenous knowledge. That's really useful for us to think about. Haley, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Haley Chantar. I am an EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador from Malta. We are 15 EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassadors, some of whom are also here today. We're 4 of us here. There's Catherine at the back, I can see. There's also Ugne. Just to introduce the EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador Program. So we come from different countries of the European Union, and our role is basically to bring the youth perspective into bioeconomy policies, to be the bridge between the European Commission and the youth in our communities, and to also talk about bioeconomy within our communities. So I've done this by firstly launching the Bioeconomy Matters podcast together with another EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador, Rita Scorcio from Portugal. It's the world's first podcast dedicated to bioeconomy. It's been almost a year now with over 1,000 listeners. And basically this podcast is an interview-based podcast where we interview people from different industries and sectors to really showcase how bioeconomy is present in our everyday lives. And no matter what your interests are, bioeconomy is a part of what you do. And really just showcasing that in a very accessible manner as much as possible. But as EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassadors, we've also done various other initiatives. For instance, our Bioeconomy Youth Vision, which was published last March and presented at the European Commission Bioeconomy Changemakers Festival. And in this vision, we really try to capture the perspectives of youth on bioeconomy, because often we are underrepresented. At least at the European Union level, we could see that the members of the European Parliament, the average age of the members of the European Parliament is above 44. So average age is above 44, which is obviously quite high coming from a youth age gap. So there are various reasons as to why, of course, the youth are underrepresented. For instance, we have less support from political parties in order to nominate us to run for elections, less mentoring opportunities. We need more networking, of course, to be introduced to political parties, more funding opportunities, because, of course, running for elections is quite expensive. And if we want youth to be very present in decision-making, we have to ensure that there is, the necessary guidance and the necessary support in order to do that. But our Bioeconomy Youth Vision highlights other aspects of this. So also our 5 key messages are firstly youth involvement. Then we have education, bioeconomy education. Thirdly is to rethink economics. The 4th key message we have is the responsible use of bio-based resources. And the 5th key message we have is assessing bioeconomy. So does bioeconomy really support the global north and the global south? These are aspects which we really did also consider in our Bioeconomy Youth Vision. I also, in order to really help and communicate more about what bioeconomy is, I translated a book, a children's book from English to Maltese, about what bioeconomy is. And I think you can also see on the screen what I've been up to. I also recently just graduated with a law degree from Tilburg University. I studied in Europe, in Asia, and in South America, so in Hong Kong and also in Colombia. And I'm also a young farmer, so I mostly focus on olive oil pressing part of our farm together with my father. Right now is olive picking season, and so when I go home, we're going to have to press some olives. So that's something else I also do.
That's a lot of terrific stuff to work with here today. We've got a lot of questions and not a lot of time. So we're going to do the best we can to get as many questions in as we can. And there's a clock right over there. I want to go first to Lily. Can you speak more broadly about the possibility of biotech as a capacity builder for local, regional communities? And any thoughts you might share regarding adoption of biotechnology specifically for a bioeconomy future?
So, of course, biotechnology is very important for building of capacity in regional and local level. But I just want to turn to something that's more important. Once you want to use a biotechnology, important thing is you have to have the efficient management of your biological resources, as well as the equitable benefit sharing in place. So this is something that we often forgot to think about. And I think one of the mission of the ASEAN network on microbial utilization, we don't only promote the utilization of microbial resources in ASEAN, but we also promote the management of microbe in the region as well as promote the utilization of the microbe in the region. So I want to give example of one project really shortly. It's called AMBI-based, ASEAN Microbial Database. So what we started is like people actually work on the research to do the microbial biodiversity. They isolate, they identify, they keep it, and once they finish, they retire. That microbes had not been kept systematically and it cannot be used. So basically we introduced this microbial database management to the ASEAN, and we learned that many cultural collections in the university, in the research institute in ASEAN, they don't really have this kind of system. So this project introduced that, and in the end, we harmonized the 16 collection that joins to this ASEAN microbial database, and that will be a start for biotechnology and bioeconomy use in the ASEAN region. So I think that's one of the examples that is very important. Before you have bioeconomy, you have to have a good management of bioresources as well as the access and benefit sharing in place. Thank you.
That's great. It talks about the physical and the digital requirements and shared assets. That's terrific. The next two questions are kind of related. I think you're going to see how they fall together pretty nicely. First is to Nicolo and then to Zhang. So Nicolo, you mentioned the challenges of getting to scale, and we're seeing lots of challenges broadly across the sector. What are the biggest ones that the EU faces and the EU companies are facing in scaling up technologies into the market? And then Zhang, I think it'd be interesting for you to answer your question after you hear from him.
Thank you. Yes, look, there are many challenges, and we discussed them also this morning in a very interesting workshop. But so if I would have to, I would like to mention three that were mentioned actually this morning. The first one is the financing. We actually see that despite we invest 1 billion euro in 200 projects in Europe, this is not enough. We have many excellent projects that remain unfunded. And so we are trying to diversify, to try to build alliances with other financial institutions, and we will do that in the future, especially next year. But so the financing part remains a difficult, I mean, this morning Catherine called it the second valley of death after the one on developing a technology, and that's linked with the market uptake. The second thing, and I go back to the market uptake, is certainly the regulatory framework. Because to drive products to the market, these things, we are talking that often they are nature origin processes, but actually they are completely new. They don't fit anywhere. They don't fit with chemicals, they don't fit with traditional materials, and so the current European regulatory framework is I wouldn't say rigid, but it's not fit to purpose. So definitely that's something that has to be done to adapt and open up more venues to drive these products to the market. And the third point is about the narrative about the bioeconomy, how to explain the bioeconomy to people who know little about it and will be the decision makers, politicians, financing institutions. They really see it as very risky. It was mentioned this morning several times during the plenary. It is still a sector that is highly risky, and so banks, venture capital, they are extremely prudent. And that's why public funding helps building trust and confidence in that sense.
Thanks. That's a great segue to Zhang's question, which is, what are some of the barriers and success factors for private capital investment?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think, for all the challenges you just mentioned, obviously it's not the first time I heard about it, but, if it's still a challenge in Europe, you can imagine the challenge in other parts of the world. So I think in general, the nature sector is not mature enough yet to just attract investment. So we work quite a lot with investment advisors, fund managers, etc. So as I mentioned, risk is a big problem here. And in addition to the regulatory framework you mentioned, the market readiness, there's also the finance needs. And then on the finance side, because it's not ready, we do need the public source, the concessional finance to come in. And then, we're talking about financial instrument. For example, equity is actually a risk-absorbing instrument, which, from the public source or from the concessional source, it can actually provide the stability, provide at least the confidence to actually more commercial or other source of funding coming in. But the other thing is, through the partners we work with, we realize it actually takes quite a lot of time, and it's quite expensive for actually a fund to be established and then really invest in, let's say, in nature, in bioeconomy. So that's why we actually, through our project, we have something called the Restoration Seed Capital Facility, where we actually provide reimbursable grant to some of the fund managers, investment advisors, if they want to set up a fund on restoration. Because we realize even for fundraising, they need a lot of time. They need to do the roadshows. They need to reach out to investors. And then they need to also do pipeline development, also project development, because the project doesn't just happen. You have the money there, but you also need to find where to invest. And then, again, if we come back to the risk on the actual investment, there's also risk related to the projects. So again, the de-risking tools, for example, guaranteeing, first loss guaranteeing can also play a big role for many of the investors. At least then they have the risk to be shared with the concessional source. So then they can actually take a bit more risk and then go into investing in more sustainable agriculture, restoration, etc. And again, through one of the funds that we helped to set up is called the Agri3 Fund, is actually supporting, providing guaranteeing to commercial banks so they can actually go into investing in sustainable agriculture practices. But obviously when you're talking about investment, this is from the investor's perspective. But you also need to look at the other side of the coin, which is the pipeline of projects. Because we also saw their funds established, there were investment committed, but it's not going anywhere because there's not enough bankable projects to the scale and the size and the required impact. So we're also trying to help on supporting some of the local businesses. I've seen some of the businesses already today, in Kenya and then in other parts of the world. But we have something called the Restoration Factory, where we actually support business incubation, especially in the restoration area. We've done a cohort in Kenya already, and also in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Brazil, and we're about to start in DRC, Tanzania, Bangladesh, Rwanda, etc. So it is really to help the startups really at the grassroots level, at the local level. In many cases, it might be just 2 people start a business and they really struggle how to make their ideas in restoration, to really grow. And we've seen there's the businesses are in different sectors. There's a lot in agriculture, in food and beverage, and there's also in cosmetics, in water purification, and also, online database for agricultural species, etc. So, the idea is by supporting the investors and the investees, so hopefully one day they can merge. But the current problem is still the size problems. It keeps coming back because the funds, they're looking at the bigger ticket size, and a lot of the small businesses, they're way too small. But hopefully through the support and then through the mentor and then the seed investment, etc., they can grow, and then they can really make the economy and the finance start flowing.
That's the hope, yeah. Thanks. Well, we learned from Madla that there are investments in parts of the food system. Why is transformation so slow?
Well, I think my colleague has already touched on it a little bit, right? That there's often a mismatch. There's a mismatch in terms of, the size of, investments that people are willing to make, and where the need is actually greatest. And I think one of the definite challenges is exactly that the investments are often not fit for purpose. And I have to be controversial here and say that often the investments are really looking at the wow factor to get clicks and sound bites and very exciting. But when you really look at the potential impact, it's often quite missing. So I think what we need is a conversation around not democratizing, but maybe disaggregating what the finance need is and making it fit for purpose. Our experience is that, when we work with food processors, they are coming at us with two main issues. The first one is about, procuring raw materials. They need working capital for that. And often the amount of money that they are needing and when they need it, it does not make sense to traditional finance. So if we're going to promote, say, processing of Bambara nut or fonio, these companies that we are asking to procure that commodity actually need the working capital to be able to do that in sufficient quantity for them to keep the farmers interested. That's on the one side. The other side is equipment finance. The bioeconomy that we're talking about does require unique and innovative equipment to be installed in these factories. And there's often not enough funding that is going into buying a $100,000 plant. They look at you and say, you must be kidding. But that $100,000 plant could generate a $4, $5, $6 million US per business per year, which will allow for the pool for the raw materials from farmers and the delivery of good quality commodities or products into the marketplace.
Yeah, the wow factor and sound bites. Speaking of sound bites, I can't believe how well this has actually worked out. We have just a couple of minutes left, and maybe, Ian, there could be 30 seconds for a wrap-up, maybe, hopefully. Haley, question for you. Recent graduate, vast experience with bioeconomy. What steps can be taken to make sure that the job opportunities in the bioeconomy that we know are needed can happen?
Okay, well, excellent question. Especially as a recent graduate, I kind of sympathize with having to job hunt. So I have like 4 steps kind of what I think needs to be done or could be done for more progress. So the first step is with regards to our education system itself. So by incorporating bioeconomy within our existing degrees. So not necessarily to have specialized degrees, but to really train our, for instance, next generation of doctors or architects or engineers about the importance of bioeconomy and the environment within their sectors already. So for instance, including these in courses such as, having a fashion degree, and then you would have a course in, bio-based textiles and sustainable fashion. With regards to economics, business, or finance degrees, having courses with regards to bioeconomy and green business models, with climate finance and bioeconomy. These could all be courses which we could incorporate already in our existing degrees. With regards to my degree, law, and also policy degrees, we could incorporate, for instance, bioeconomy and environmental law, looking at the legal framework of bio-based industries, the climate change regulations, sustainable resource use. This is something that even though in my degree we had courses where we did touch upon the environment, and I tried to also bring it into my thesis because of how much I love it, we didn't have courses specialized on this, yet it's a really important part of our society and how we're going to move forward, because it's a global threat to our existence. So it's going to touch not just bioeconomy sectors per se, but all kinds of sectors. The second step would be also partnerships between the industries and the universities themselves to create this kind of job pipeline. So if you really want more people to go into bioeconomy sectors, to make this more accessible and more easy for young graduates to find working opportunities within these bioeconomy sectors by creating these job pipelines already. The third part is to make them accessible. And by this, I mean accessible entry-level employment opportunities. So 2 ways I was thinking. First of all, is to create these entry-level positions by not just internships, but really by real employment opportunities that could have more growth within the company. And tying this with internships is also providing competitive compensation. So as I job hunt, I really see for instance, unpaid internships or salaries which would really just cover the bare minimum to live. And I don't know, maybe a show of hands of how many people here would, work for free? I see none. Oh, one? You would work for free? Okay. Two hands. You would work for free. And how would you live? How would you survive?
It's a different question, I think.
Yeah. So also, if you want to, attract more employment opportunities, you also have to make it competitive enough in order for people to be willing to be employed in these sectors. And the fourth step is to also encourage youth entrepreneurship. So you not only have to work within these industries, but also the startups. So providing, having growth for youth-led bioeconomy startups through providing grants, seed funding, access to mentorships to really help youth entrepreneurs succeed in the bioeconomy sector.
That's fantastic. Lots of solutions here on the table. That's fantastic. All right, Ian, over to you.
Well, how do I try and summarise that session? I said at the start of that session that we were really going to focus on innovation, and I think we did that. I think to some extent we've had a grand tour of the bioeconomy this afternoon. We've covered everything from microbial diversity to the bioeconomy's role in promoting gender equality, to the overwhelming importance of safety of our food systems, the opportunities for a bioeconomy to benefit health, to provide education. I mean, this is I understand why we struggle to describe or to understand bioeconomy, because bioeconomy is as wide as the economy. The bioeconomy, I often say, is the economy. It's the economy of today and it's to a greater extent the economy of the future. So I think it's okay that we struggle to understand or struggle to promote, because actually it touches on so many diverse parts of what we do. We've covered off on some of the large-scale flagship programs. We've seen examples from the EU and the US and other places, and Thailand. We've seen how good policy, working together across departments, across whole of government, is really important in helping to promote and drive bioeconomy forward. We've understood that there is actually a lot of money in the finance system. The question really is a matter of where it's being directed to. And maybe we need to think as a community about how we promote better investment choices to promote climate positive and nature positive outcomes. And I think when I when I look at all of that and pull it all together, I think, and I reflect on some of the words of our panellists this afternoon, a lot of what we're doing in all of those systems is trying to enhance the maturity of our bioeconomy solutions and to reduce the risk of investment. And so I think that's one of the good takeouts that from this afternoon. How do we think about how do we just really build the maturity of what we're trying to do and create that environment that people have the confidence to invest and to take these solutions. Industry has the opportunity to take these solutions to market. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Ian. I want to say thank you to all of our panelists today. I wish we had more time. It's such a great opportunity to talk with you. I also want to say thanks to you for joining, both in person and remotely, and to Ian for co-chairing. It's been terrific. Thank you.